Hello and welcome to another edition of the Father and Son Pastime Podcast. I'm Patrick.
I'm Kevin.
That's my dad. Today we are continuing with our feature of doing the all-time dream team for each MLB franchise, and today's team is the Chicago White Sox.
It's a great team to go through. They were very good in the 50s and 60s and had a little roller coaster and had a championship team recently, and they've been up and down for the last 20, 30 years.
Yeah, long history of the Chicago White Sox. We're looking at the White Sox from 1901 to now, so we got about 120 years to cover. One requirement that we follow when talking about dream teams is they have to be a member of, in this case, the White Sox for at least 3 seasons. They have plenty of people to choose from, so finding qualified candidates was not a challenge here at all. I found in my part, Dad, that a lot of positions could have gone like one of two ways.
Correct.
So we'll see if we end up with the same person or if we went with another person. So
there's first baseman DHs.
Yeah, I did see that, and I think there's also an easy 25-man roster you can make out of the White Sox, and I think some people would definitely make other people's dream teams if they weren't a White Sox, for example.
Correct.
Yeah. All right, so we kind of ping-pong our choices. We start with catcher. We work through all position players. We do a pitcher, a reliever, and a closer as well, and then we also kind of have some fun with the best manager in franchise history, as well as our favorite logo. It's a fun way to end it.
Mm-hmm. One of the things that the viewers will find out is there's some repeat players that played other teams that are on this team as well, at least in my list, that make it kind of interesting.
The only repeat I have is, we'll start, the catcher Carlton Fisk.
I'm with you 100% with Carlton.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't... Yeah, I mean, there's a really older catcher that's, I want to say, like 1910, 1920, that was in the Hall of Fame for the White Sox. But Carlton Fisk for me was a simple choice, both offensive and defensive.
Yeah, A.J. Pernitzky was one that was kind of like second. He was with them for quite a number of years. A solid catcher, but not a superstar. But I had him as a backup. But Carlton, again, just because so good for so long, and again one of the leaders when the White Sox were not that great.
Yeah. So moving on to first bases, where I think you could have one of 3 people. Obviously, don't worry, the big hurt will be here eventually. But for me, I actually chose Jose Abreu as my all-time White Sox first baseman.
Whoa.
I know people are going to choose Cornoco out there, and I totally get that longevity there. But Abreu has had better seasons with the White Sox, and he really likes playing in Chicago, too.
Wow, I had Frank Thomas.
Yeah, again, I'm going to have him as my DH.
Yeah, Frank, I think he probably did more early on in his career, did much more first base, but in lots of polls of the White Sox fan, he's number 1 of all-time White Sox.
Yeah, I completely agree with that.
Yeah.
That 90s mentality. He was for the White Sox what Griffey was for the Mariners.
I agree.
Same time period, too.
That's a great
Same
analogy.
division. Yeah,
and then
both going for MVPs.
Very good with the fans, very loyal to the White Sox, great player and very consistent.
Yeah. Just jumping ahead here, so who'd you put for DH then?
DH, I had Harold Baines.
Oh, okay, very interesting. Okay, that's definitely a good spot to put him in.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so Cornoco wasn't even on your list at all.
Not whatsoever. In fact, the third first baseman DH was Dick Allen, who was an unbelievable player back in the early 70s. Always hit a top home run person. Was a little controversial with what he did off the field, but as a player, he was very valuable and was probably one of the great players for several years for the White Sox when, again, they didn't have a lot of star players.
Awesome. So, yeah, sound off in the comments below if you think Cornoco was a snub or agree with us in that he did not make our list. Second baseman, go ahead, Dan.
Nellie Fox.
I chose Nellie as well.
Yeah,
Collins was my backup, but go ahead.
Yeah. Nellie, again, this is in the 50s, and Nellie was always an all-star, a short in stature second baseman, batted left-handed, was one of the guys with Louis Aparicio that hit 1-2 of the White Sox, kind of the machine that got people on base and got scored some runs. That's when they were probably at their best consistently, was in the 50s and 60s.
Yeah, and that's the one word I would describe Nellie Fox as, is consistent.
Yeah.
Very reliable. For shortstop, I went with Aparicio, Luis Aparicio. Are you agreeing, disagreeing?
I agree. And again, a great, consistent Venezuelan shortstop. Played with the Orioles as well, but early on was the kind of a cornerstone with the White Sox. A great, great player. Again, him and Nellie were the stars of the team.
Yeah, a lot of great defense in my infield. We're about to show my third base choice as well. But Luisa had 9 Gold Gloves in his career, which is a lot for a shortstop, especially with a lot of other qualified people in that time period as well.
About 145 pounds. I mean, he was a small man.
Hall of Fame, man.
But strong, and really could pick it and had a great arm.
Third base?
Bill Melton.
Tell me about Bill. Because I don't know anything about Bill Melton.
Bill Melton was just towards the end of the 70s. Good home run hitter. Award number 7. Always one of the people that went to the All-Star games during that era. Again, when they didn't have a lot of choices for the All-Star team. But for all the third basemen, consistently and longevity, Bill was an easy choice for me going down the list of third basemen.
I think third base is where the White Sox struggle the most. I don't think there's a true star that emerges at this position in the entirety of the White Sox history.
Mm-hmm.
But I went with Robin Ventura. He was better defensively than I remember. A lot in the early 90s. He had ended up 6 gold gloves. I think 5 were with the White Sox. So really good defensively, pretty consistent hitter. High average, not Hall of Fame average. Good home runs, not Hall of Fame home runs.
Correct.
So like a really good hitter, really good player, and obviously great defense as well.
Except when he got hit by Nolan Ryan.
Yes, I think that was his rookie year, second year. Yes, one of the best baseball fights in history for sure.
Yeah.
Left field, I think this one is a pretty simple choice unless you hold 1919 over his head. But Shoeless Joe Jackson is my starting left fielder.
You know what? I had Bo Jackson.
Really? Okay.
Yes. And I had Shoeless Joe as like 1A. And Shoeless Joe was phenomenal.
So a different Jackson. Okay.
So I went through the Jackson brothers.
They're not related.
But anyway, just going through the list and all that stuff.
Did Bo play 3 years?
He did.
I thought he played more with the Royals, but okay.
He did, and then I think through free agency or a trade, went to the White Sox, and that is when he broke his hip playing with the Oakland Raiders, and then tried to come back with the White Sox. Didn't quite do it. It kind of ended his career, but he was with the White Sox during that time when he broke his hip playing football. One of the true great two-sport players of this, last longevity with the last 30 years, but was a phenomenal athlete. And again, seeing him play left field in person was a great honor.
Mm-hmm. So, absolutely love Bo Jackson, but Shoeless Joe Jackson's where my heart lies for this pick. While he was, I guess he and the other 8 players, or 9 total players, were sort of arguing why they should not be banned for baseball for life. In his 1920 season, he hit .382 in his last season. So he could really hit the ball well, definitely way before, I know, 100 years ago, basically.
Very good defensive player, too, from what I understand.
Yeah. So Shoeless Joe Jackson's definitely a myth and a legend of the game, if that makes any sense. Yeah. But he's definitely worthy of
Did he
a left
play
field
after 19? With
1920, 1 year. So they were appealing their 1919 World Series decision, if that makes any sense, and it went through Congress, and it was a big legal battle.
Right.
And I think the final action either got held that winter of 20 or early spring of 21 is when they got banned for baseball.
Okay.
Check my facts.
And what a shame, because he was a great player.
Yeah, but again, we're not here to talk about the Black Sox scandal. Center field, I went with a name that I had to look up some because center field is another place I kind of struggle with, but Johnny Mosteal, I want to say 50s, 60s, and it had really great defense.
That's a new name.
Yeah.
That's a brand new name. I had Jim Landis, and Jim Landis.
I know Jim.
And that was center field during, again, kind of through the Bill Melton era and all that stuff, but was a solid center fielder during that time. Again, kind of like a weak spot for the White Sox when I went through everything. So, again, I didn't think that they had a lot of stars coming out of center field, but Jim Landis was a consistent one.
Yeah, I think he would probably get fan favorite, too.
Yeah.
But I went with just Mosteal. I think this just to balance out my offense, if that makes any sense. I have some power. I have some people that can certainly hit for average, and Mosteal just really brings a lot of great defense to my outfield. But again, sort of center field swaps on that. Like I said, there's like two options for most positions. Right field.
Minnie Minoso.
All right, so I can see how you're moving people around. Minnie could have played left. All right, so Minnie just due to speed, defense, average.
Everything.
Okay.
I think he played into his 40s, ended up being a pinch hitter galore with the White Sox and everything else. I think by far the longest tenured White Sox of all time, still revered in Chicago, and again, early on, was an everyday outfielder and was sensational. Again, high average when a team was not that great.
I went with a newer name, obviously not as new as Abreu, but Maglio Ordonez. I thought, when him and Sosa had the right field, south side, north side, fun little battle, I guess that makes any sense. I thought Maglio Ordonez had a really underrated career. Great average, great power, great defense, great arm. So I thought that he got the pick for me.
He came up really young, too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I thought he was a great player. DH already talked about Frank Thomas. You talked about
Harold Baines.
Harold Baines. So I don't know if we need to go more into that, but Frank Thomas, great player, best White Sox ever for me.
Great story for you. Bill Veeck, who owned the White Sox at that time, lived in St. Michael's.
Is he an umpire at one point?
He did a little bit of everything.
Okay, I feel like
but
that name
he
sounds
was owner of the White Sox when people weren't going to Comiskey Park. He's the one that did the disco nights. He did like the $10 beer nights and all that stuff. He did whatever he could to get people at Comiskey Park. So during that time, he was living in St. Michael's, saw Harold Baines playing in St. Michael's, tried to keep him on the wraps because he could draft him #1 and everything. He did, and Harold Baines made just a stellar career. But one of the few players outside of Cal Ripken could get drafted right out of high school to make a major star in the major leagues. And Bill Veeck was a very innovative owner. That one year he had his player wear shorts and high socks, and then
I think I remember that year.
And he did a lot
that
of
was
different
things.
Look. Yes, he did a lot of things that were much different. Him and Charlie Finley were most innovative owners back in that era, and did some crazy things at Comiskey Park just to get fans in.
Yeah. Starting pitcher, who would your pick?
Mark Buehrle.
I picked Mark as well.
Yeah.
That was very interesting. I was thinking about doing some older picks, but you said Mark's name first, so you go first. You go first.
Well, again, I think he went through no hitter, if I'm not mistaken, and also again a consistent 18 to 20 game winner for a number of years. When it came to big games, he wanted to be on the mound.
Yeah. I like Mark a lot. I didn't know how good defensive he was. He almost reminded me of Greg Maddux. He got 4 Gold Gloves as a pitcher. Obviously, major part of the 2005 World Series. But his whole life, he threw 33 complete games, which is a lot in a modern day era. 10 of those were shutouts, and he had a total amount of games, 518 games.
So
I thought that was a kind of fun little personal connection to me.
Yeah, that's cool.
So I thought that was just kind of cool. And he really did have a great ERA, one of the best in team history as well.
Finish his career with the Blue Jays? Yeah, okay.
I think that's correct.
Yeah, but I mean, the no-hitter was one of the first no-hitters in a long time with the White Sox. So again, he was the ace for a number of years.
Relief pitcher, I had Hoyt Wilhelm, which is the only pitching Hall of Famer I went with on this list.
I had Hoyt setting up and Goose Goosage as the closer.
So Hoyt is just my reliever. So you did Hoyt as reliever as well.
Yes, and then Goose as the closer.
Okay, I went with Keith Folk as my closer.
Oh.
So I didn't even consider Goose at all actually. I thought of Thigpen and then Jenks, and they have more saves than Keith Folk does, but they have a higher ERA, and this is when a lot of runs were produced in that Frank Thomas, like Thigpen with Thomas, and you had a lot of runs produced in that 2005 era with Jenks, and then Keith Folk really had in my opinion, a better experience with the White Sox. Less saves, but less runs, less hits given up, that kind of thing. So it's like if you are Bobby Jenks, you could give up a couple runs because most of your save opportunities were when you had 3-run leads, and if you gave up a run or two, you still got the save. Well, Keith Folk pitching, you may only have that run. You have to hold that run. So I thought Keith Folk was the person who I would give the ball to in the 9th.
Yeah. And just a little secondary information about Goose, that's where he became a star before he went to the Yankees and then eventually the Cubs as well. But this is where he started his career, and that's when he had the mustache and all that stuff. And that's how he got his fame and fortune with White Sox and then moved on to the Yankees. So, yeah.
Manager, this was a lot of options, by the way. This team has a lot of managers.
Yes.
A lot of player managers, too, and that was a big thing. I went with Fielder Jones, which is a great name for a baseball player. Way back to the early 1900s when he was a player manager. I think he got the first White Sox World Series win, but looking back, he has the highest winning percentage of any White Sox manager. He doesn't have the most wins because he wasn't a manager. I think he was a manager 4 or 5 years. But in those 4 or 5 years, World Series ring, and highest winning percentage.
Ozzie Guillen.
Again, totally a great name. I think it would be a fan choice there.
Yeah. Again, because of the recent championships and everything else, Ozzie was probably manager for 7 years, loved by most players. Another manager that did really well with him called Chuck Tanner. Again, very good manager. 10, 12 years on the South Side. Again, probably finished number 2 for me. But as you look through, there was Tony La Russa was part of the managers, but they
Yeah, he
had a
was.
lot of good managers. But I think Ozzie, because of what he did in the few years he was there, kind of stands out.
Awesome. So now we close out with our favorite logo. And before you pick that, I just want to share that. So when you name a team the White Sox, you think the logo would be a white sock. And they really didn't do that until very, very later in the idea there. Just a lot of C's, a lot of Sox designs. Frankly, I don't like any of these picks, but I do have one because I am going to go with it.
Like that one. That one has been on their ball caps and all that stuff. I think that has a little style to it. Of all the things you see, I think that one's the best one.
So my dad is choosing the current logo, the current Sox logo. Again, I don't know why if you have a black Sox scandal, you would make anything in your logo black, but that's just me. So I'm going to go with the weirdest one possible. 1939 with the big White Sox bat. Maybe it's a little ode to Teddy Roosevelt, carry a big stick type of thing.
Okay.
But he looks like he's showing off his White Sox. It's the only thing that actually, that was the first White Sox design. He clearly has White Sox. It's something different. Otherwise, sorry, Chicago, your designs need to get improved.
Yeah, being on the South Side will do that to you.
So, yeah, kind of plain. I really didn't understand the 80s design at all. Let's just write Sox, Chicago, White Sox. Don't know why White Sox twice in the logo, but...
No creativity.
Yeah. So sound off in the comments below what you think of our picks. Not a lot in common this time. We had a lot of differences. Let us what big probably snub could be Karnoko on both our list. Shoeless Joe Jackson on his list could be a huge snub. All the pitchers we left off. We left off a lot of early Chicago White Sox pitchers. So let us know. Give us a like. Give us a comment. Subscribe, as this is our Mother's Day special. So this is a little shout out to all mothers out there. Thank you for producing the Father and Son Pastime podcast and all the baseball players in the major leagues and minor leagues.
And our number 1 fan.
Yeah. My mom, not your mom. That'd be weird. My mom subscribes as a big person commenting on the YouTube channels.
That's right.
So if you see her on the comments, comment on her and say, I like your son's podcast.
Yeah.
And your husband's podcast, too.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, thanks for joining. And again, happy Mother's Day.